All right, looks like we are live.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Welcome everybody to Propelling Your DevOps to New Heights. This is part of the Accelerate Forum as part of InFocus. We all hope that you are enjoying InFocus so far. We have a lot of great sessions coming up too, so definitely check out the schedule. We have a lot to cover as part of this talk, so we're going to jump right into it if that's okay with everybody. So just some quick housekeeping. This is a forum, so we'd love participation from you. So as we ask questions, if you want to type in any answers into the chat box, please do so. We encourage it. Also, too, we'd love for you to share your opinion on anything. So if you want to raise your hand, we can unmute you and have you share kind of live with us. We'd love that. And we're covering a lot of things today, and we sort of are limited to how much we can show as part of like a talk like this. If you want a demo, if you want to go dive deep on anything that we show you here today, please reach out to our team. We'd love to set up some time, and we're fully international, so it doesn't matter what time zone you're in, doesn't matter where in the world you're located. GitHub is an enormous team, and we love demoing for you, so please let us know. So without further ado, we're going to get into some introductions here. It will be myself and John that's driving the talk today. Get to know us real quick Turing tests. So yeah, I'll start. My name's Glenn. I'm based in the Bay Area. I'm a principal solutions engineer here at GitHub, and I'm happy to be presenting to you today. I've been with GitHub now for about 3 years, formerly a PM at Microsoft, and I've also worked at Xamarin before, if we have any C# developers on. Outside of work, I love to explore the natural world. That's not movie magic, that's a real volcano behind me. That was a year ago, a volcano called Gildingadalur. If we have any Icelandic folks on, I'm sorry, I probably pronounced that incorrectly. Just FYI, if you go there right now, it's dormant. So don't like see this photo and then go there and then say like, hey, it was a dud. Make sure you check the volcano forecast before. And yeah, it's something I really recommend checking out at least once in your lifetime. Yeah, why is there a photo of my leg in the hospital there? Yeah, so just real quick, very unexpectedly, I deprecated my Achilles tendon. I didn't mean to do that, but it happened. So if I make any funny faces as I'm presenting, I'm going to blame that if I bump my leg or something. But yeah, it's fine. We're going to work through it. It's no big deal. And I'm having it fixed tomorrow, so wish me luck. Yeah, I'm going to pass it to John.
Glenn, I sympathize with you. That is super painful. But also let me be the first to welcome you to the GitHub Club for folks who have presented with broken body parts. You reminded me of an event 4 years ago where if you'd been at Developer Week San Francisco, you would have seen me in a sling after a snowboard accident where I severed 3 ligaments in my right arm. So I'm patched up good. I'm sure you will come back strong as well. Hello, everyone. I'm John Peck. I am a technical advocate at GitHub and about 25-year software architect. So more than happy to be joining you all here today. I'm currently one of those folks who spends a lot of time talking to various enterprises, all the way through small businesses, about GitHub and what we do and how we can solve their technical problems. So if you do take us up on that offer to jump in and come talk to us, I may be one of the faces you see live from Seattle. All right. With that, I'd love to start with our first question. And again, just toss these into chat. We'll take a look after and try to keep my eyes on it as we're talking. But, I started out a user of GitHub, of course, before I was an employee. A big fanboy, just love everything they do. It really accelerated my development process. I got involved, because a friend. So I was working with a problem and said, hey, here's this repo as a Django component, if I recall at the time, said, hey, go jump in and contribute to this and interact with the author. And it was a wonderful experience. Got my problem solved, managed to help them out. So I want to hear those stories from you, right? We love hearing from our community. What projects on GitHub are the ones that right now for you are really inspiring and exciting? What are things you're contributing to? What are the things you're using regularly on a day-to-day basis? Drop those into chat and we'll address those later on.
Cool, thanks, John. So yeah, I want to share one of mine as well before we get into the material. And again, we have a pretty good session for you here today. So the name of the talk is Propelling Your DevOps to New Heights. Like, what does that mean? How far can GitHub DevOps take us? So yeah, we have the sort of the privilege to work with really the most cutting edge teams on earth. Like, new technology just doesn't come out of thin air. It really comes from a lot of hard work from a lot of folks that put their brains together and are shipping. And we just love seeing too about where this takes folks and what we can do. And I'll just make it clear, like we're not bound to Earth either. In this case, the sky is not the limit. The reason why I'm showing this chart is just because we're down here in the troposphere. This is where we fly our planes, and this is where we live. This Kármán line up here, this is the imaginary arbitrary line that we kind of draw in between space and us. But we're not bound by this. We're not bound by the space station. We can go way further. And some of the teams that we work with have shipped to Mars, powered by GitHub. This fact blows my mind, and it just makes me sort of really excited for the future, and we're just really proud about the work that we're doing here. And specifically, what I'm talking about is the Ingenuity mission, which is like a complementary mission to Curiosity. So for those folks that haven't seen it before, there is a helicopter flying around Mars that was brought as part of the Perseverance mission that was recently launched and landed. And this is still flying. It's flown something like 17 different times. So not only is it like the drone have a drone, it's that it's also extremely successful. And this is a demonstrator just to make sure that we can operate aerodynamically in low density atmospheres. We have to test this before we can send something bigger and before we're flying around helicopters on Mars. And guess where that code is? This is driven by a open source flight control framework written by JPL, one of the teams that we work with. They use both GitHub Enterprise Server, which is a on-premises local enterprise instance. So if you want to like host your own github.com, you can do so behind your firewall on your own metal. And they also use GitHub Enterprise Cloud too for their open source contributions, driven by GitHub Actions, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, this just really inspires me to see people collaborating, to see the power of open source, to see what happens when we put our brains together and have a powerful engine to drive it. And you can go download this code. This is all open source. Maybe you can fly your own helicopter around your apartment, something like that. And driven by GitHub Actions, so rapid iteration and driven by open source. So I just want to share that. It's something that inspires me. And if you want to see more science stuff, we've already talked about this in previous GitHub Universe chats. But another just sort of amazing achievement is the Event Horizon Telescope image, the first image of a black hole. A bunch of radio astronomers collaborating within GitHub's platform and producing something I never thought I would see in my life. So just wanted to share that. And I'm going to pass it back to John for the next portion of our talk, which is culture.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Give me just a second as we deal with the slide sharing business here. So, when we look at projects like that, we look at these amazing things that we launched into space and beyond to other planets. How do those projects come about, right? Development operations, DevOps, is the process of planning and executing on these awesome kind of projects. It's how we go about creating the products that bring these amazing results into humanity, right? And at GitHub, we spend a lot of time thinking about DevOps. It's really tempting, though, to first jump right into tooling, right? The specific technologies which make all this collaboration and automation possible. But we also have to remember that these technologies are meaningless unless there's a culture which is welcoming to and supportive all of those practices that the tooling is trying to support. It isn't just something you can buy and install, this culture. It takes thoughtful, dedicated, directed effort. We have a highly collaborative culture inside GitHub. We take our responsibilities toward our peers and toward the larger developer community quite seriously. And so what I'd love to do is take a few minutes to share some of the guidelines, some of the cultural standards that we live by daily. By the way, these are just a few, some of my hand-picked favorites. If you want more, there's a couple of web resources I really recommend searching for. One is the Zen of GitHub, and the other, a little bit older, something I've been reading since my early days as a developer, the 10 Commandments of Egoless Programming, a really fun kind of laundry list of things you might consider living by as a software developer. So first off, don't work in a vacuum. So when you start a project, you have to assume that the people around you are going to know more collectively than you do individually. You have to accept that you're going to make mistakes, and somebody out there in the world is always going to be able to spot a typo that you might happen to be blind to, or another slightly more efficient way to code a particular algorithm, or perhaps remember some tidbit of knowledge that is going to change your entire approach to a project. It's a little bit scary, sharing your work while it's still in progress. But it's also a really wonderful thing because it presents your best opportunity to learn from the wisdom of others. And it's way better to address problems early on when your product is still in development and before it goes out into the big bad world and breaks something or fails to work when it's important to. Now, to enable that active, visible collaboration, it's also important to be able to maintain the integrity of your main product line. And that's why one of the things we do at GitHub is we always protect our main branch of code and then work on feature branches. What this allows us to do is to experiment without risk. These different branches are variations of the product where we're trying out experiments, we're iterate and we're refining on new ideas. And we know all the while that we're not damaging the main copy of the product as we experiment. Each individual project might have dozens or even thousands of different branches made by different people. Each one represents a different set of experiments, which may or may not end up becoming part of that final product. Then, when somebody finally decides that an experiment is successful, that's worth bringing back, they don't just force that set of changes back into the whole. Instead, they ask. Branches become part of the primary copy by way of this thing we call a pull request. And it's called that very intentionally because it is a request, not a demand. It's basically saying to our collaborators, hey, take note of the changes we're proposing. Please discuss this solution, suggest alterations, find flaws, and help me fix them. This is where that magical collaboration happens, where you can bring in resources across your company, across your peer group, people you've worked with before, folks who are subject matter experts on what you're doing, and they're going to help you ensure that your solution is properly analyzed and reviewed, it does what it should, and it gets benefits from all of those contributors that choose to jump in. Now, in order to be able to rely on those individuals, you have to be able to trust them. And that starts by exhibiting trustworthy behavior yourself. So, one of the things we say is assume positive intent and exhibit it. Be respectful and helpful in all of your interactions, and also expect the same of others. If you misstep, acknowledge it, correct it. And if you see mistakes, make sure that you're critiquing the code, the content, not the people who made it. This kind of interaction gives us the freedom to work openly and to solicit help from others. By the way, for any managers that are out there in the audience, this is on you to drive. If your team doesn't have a culture of innate support and respect, you need to make this your very first priority because everything else on the team stems from this seed. And by the way, this doesn't mean that non-managers get a free pass. No, we need to live this truth daily. We need to exhibit love for our peers, even if we're fiercely debating what's going to be the best approach to a problem. Now, collaboration is extremely important, but we also know that heads down focus time is critical toward doing our most productive work. When we're in a state of flow and our mental state is fully encompassed by some engaging task, and then we get interrupted by something else that requires our brain, it's a challenging problem, it takes an average of 23 minutes for us to get back into our previous work. You're not just losing time working on the other thing, you're losing significant time switching between computationally expensive tasks. If that happens 10 times a day, you've wasted half of your day. So don't put that burden on yourself. Instead, adopt a habit of working asynchronously by default, but also enhancing this with intentional and high fidelity brainstorming sessions. What this means is you set aside time to focus and remain intentional about when and how you leave your door open. In our digital world, this means things like blocking time on your calendar to work on specific projects, turning off your chat apps, muting your phone, deciding on specific times when you check your email, whatever it is that works for you to be able to go heads down when you need to. But then set meetings very intentionally. have defined outcomes for those, and assign pre-work. Give people the code, the things they need to review beforehand so they're not reviewing it inside the meeting. And make sure you keep those meetings small so they're highly interactive and have good results, but also encourage later contributions by sharing your recordings and your notes, making them editable, because you never know when the most valuable contributor to your project might be in an opposite time zone and unable to attend your meeting live. So, quick question for you all. When you think about work habits, what are your favorite techniques for making sure that you get that focus time, but you also remain collaborative and interactive with others? Let me share a few that I rely on personally, because I want to make sure that I'm staying on top of my responsibilities to others without becoming overwhelmed, while also giving myself that necessary focus time. First off, I use recipient-defined notification channels. What do I mean by that? I mean, I know how I work, where I work, what tools I tend to be in, how it's best to message me. So I decide whether I want to be notified by email, by chat, by mobile app, some other third-party plugin when other people need to reach me. I do things like I go into my repos and very intentionally choose what kinds of notifications I'm going to get. Maybe for this particular project, I only need to know about every major release, but for this other thing I'm intimately involved in, I need to know about every single change to the code. I set those intentionally. I also make clear to my peers when I'm available and when I'm not. I set work hours, I put those blocks on my calendar, I change my Slack status message intentionally, and I do reassure my peers when they tell me about something high priority that I'm going to respond, and give them a specific timeline for when and how deeply I'm going to respond to that before going back into focus. I also make use of distributed responsibility, meaning that, for example, when I have a pull request and I name an approver, I'm not just naming an individual, I'm naming a team, or I'm using a round robin or a load balancing strategy, so that that burden of response is spread out across a group. Whoever the individual most able to respond can do so, give me the reviews and approvals I need. No one person is taking all the hits and having all of their time consumed. I also make sure to put expectation up front. Inside every project, we define who the core team members through code owners. We define how we're going to review new contributions, what sort of assistance we most need from people coming in. We set those expectations ahead of time and define what information we need from contributors as they create or review pull requests, issues, etc. This minimizes noisy communication and streamlines the entire process. So these techniques let me stay productive and focused when I need to. They also build a stronger team overall. We know we can rely on each other. We know this collaboration won't break our flow or slow our individual work, but we also are going to collaborate in an effective manner. We deliver faster, but we stay connected to others, and we celebrate our collective work. This works wonderfully for projects where you have dedicated working teams where everybody's in agreement about what the techniques should be. But we also want this to go further. We want to make it possible and appealing for anyone across the entire company or even in the world to discover and utilize and contribute to any project. How can we make that happen? First off, utilize open knowledge repositories, right? We have a philosophy that when it comes to our work, unless there's a specific legal or security related reason not to, anything we create is visible to the entire company by default, and sometimes even public to the entire world. This is the code we write, it's the plans we make, even this very presentation, right? From the day we started working on it, anyone in the company could come in, see the presentation, comment on it, contribute their ideas. Now, at first, this is kind of terrifying, right? You're exposing your raw, unfinished thoughts to anyone who wants to see them. But overall, it allows us to feel more safe and supported in our work as time goes on. Because, like we said earlier, it means we're getting that solid feedback from our peers before anything really goes out to production. We're getting input early in the process. And then as we continue to iterate, we're getting continuous feedback from them. Together, we end up building a better product. And by the way, no one individual has to feel like they're bearing the full weight of that or pretend that they're perfect. We know this is a group product. I might be driving it primarily, but we're receiving contributions from everyone and we're double checking each other's work. And that makes me feel a lot safer and more confident in what I'm creating. Now, making these repositories open is great, but it also isn't enough. We need to actively welcome contributors to come and contribute. So inside each repository, we define our contribution policies through things like our maintainers.md, through things like issue templates. We actively tag issues in ways that are going to invite action. We'll say, hey, this is a good first issue for somebody just starting out on this project. Or we'll say, this bug really needs help. Can somebody with a certain kind of expertise jump in? Then, when people do, we actively celebrate those contributions. We publicly recognize the hard work of our peers. As we do so, we learn each other's expertise, we learn our problem-solving approaches, and we observe actual work. This enables us later on to go and request help from others and to give back effectively. We're building these working relationships which are based on our shared interests, our active work, and incorporate all of our disparate capabilities. These spontaneous relationships really pay off over time. When I know that I can reach across the company for 5 minutes of assistance from an expert on some subject that I've worked with before, and that ends up saving me 2 days of ramping up on a new concept myself, later on, I'm going to reciprocate when they need help. Both of our projects are going to accelerate because of that. So, a question for you. I let you know about the first project that I was involved with and how I got welcomed into it. I want to know how you got engaged with your very first or your favorite open source project. What did people do to welcome you into that? What did they do to reciprocate your assistance later on? All right, I'm going to leave you with one last thing to think about. Open source isn't just about the code that makes up your product. It's also about the planning and the documentation, and it's also about the testing and delivery. At GitHub, we wanted developers to be able to adopt that same open first mindset, but for automation as well. So we built an open source marketplace where anyone in the world can contribute to and utilize reusable automations. We call those actions. This allows developers to find and then seamlessly make use of open source tools for a whole variety of purposes, running test suites, deploying to hosting infrastructure, linting, interacting with chat ops, and a whole ton more. And then when you come up with a new bit of automation that you think others might find useful, you have the option of open sourcing that and providing it to all the other developers out there in the world. We've seen this to be an incredible productivity boost. On average, each developer saves about 25 minutes per day when they start using automations as part of their daily workflow. And Glenn, here's where we get back to you. I think this is one of the main topics that you're going to touch on in your section. So I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Absolutely. John, before we jump into that, we had 2 questions that maybe we should address. Top question being, somebody asked, and thank you for your contribution, best way to do whiteboarding in a remote environment. Any pro tips there?
Yeah, that's truly all over the board. There's a few stickies style tools that I'm a fan of, but if you're thinking about actually diagramming out, I got to tell you, it seems really simple. But I tend to just use Google Slides. I open up a new slide deck. I use the basic shapes and that sort of thing for diagramming. And you can have a whole bunch of people collaborating at the same time. They can be commenting on it. They can be adding in their own contributions, however you want to work. And so even though it's a piece of software designed for presentation, really, I find that unless you need extremely specific, highly technical, zoomable diagrams, that's going to work for 99% of purposes.
Excellent, thank you. And then one more, fork versus branch in GitHub. What's the difference?
Yeah, we can definitely get into that. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna leave that on hold, and I'm gonna recommend a blog issue that just came out. If you search for friendly forking. There's a great little article about how forks work and why they're important that just came out on the GitHub blog. So I'll leave that for you there.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna reshare here and get into the tooling section. So John, just to confirm, you can see my tooling slide full screen, right?
Looking good.
Cool, thank you for confirming. Yeah, so we just talked a lot about culture. On the back half here, we're going to talk about how we can practically apply this now and with regards to tooling. So what we're specifically talking about is GitHub's automation engine. Now, for those folks that are not developing on GitHub right now, GitHub Actions is our automation engine, and it's more of a platform than it is just strictly CI/CD, and we're going to get into that. I was born in the 80s, so I got to do some Back to the Future, you know. So this comes in the form of workflows. Now, workflows can really be anything. So of course, we can lint, we can test, we can do CI/CD, but also too, there's other tasks that you have to do associated with software development that are not just limited to CI/CD. So really, you can do anything. You can bind to any webhook or event that happens within GitHub. And we'll jump into some examples in just a moment. So one of the ones that we use at GitHub is something called stale issues. And if you're in your repository, you can do this anytime by just navigating to the Actions tab. And once you're there, you can start to immediately add new GitHub actions. Now, let's take a look at the marketplace and see which type of actions that we can wield here. So marketplace, by the way, these are all free and open source by design. So if there's any action that you want to explore or kind of click into, you can fork it, you can clone it, you can make it your own, you can modify it. What's really great about this too is that we have such a variety now. You know, when we first launched Actions a few years ago, yes, we had something like, you know, maybe a few thousand, but we've just seen such tremendous growth in the amount of actions that we have now. We're approaching 13,000, almost there. So even if you took a look at this, you know, even just 6 months ago, I would revisit it. And what we're doing here is that we're really trying to save developers time. Everybody's capable of writing a YAML file and, you know, writing a CI/CD script, but the limiting factor is that we sort of task developers with doing more than ever. And just like with open source, what we want to do is that we want to wield what's already been built and built on top of it. And the reason why that's important is just because, again, the limiting factor is that we don't have time to write always a complex CI/CD script. And as we're aware, this is getting more complex. There's more testing and linting and security related tasks that has to be done as part of the build process. And it's becoming a non-trivial effort to write a CI/CD script. So I highly encourage you to revisit the GitHub Marketplace and look at the amazingness that's going on here. And if we click into one, for example, we can see here that we have a verified creator, which means that we have verified that this action was created by this organization called Red Hat Actions. And also too, if you ever want to see what's going on with regards to what this action is, what the source code is, you can clone this, you can bring this into your own environment, you can look at the code, you can see the issues. This is GitHub, you know, so if you find something that's wrong and you want to file an issue, you can absolutely do that. If you want to fix something or add functionality, fire up a pull request and talk to the developer. So this is what's so cool about it too, is that it's not set in stone. It's always a constantly sort of dynamic landscape for what it could be. And we highly encourage you to revisit it because there are so many more than even just a few months ago. So yeah, also too, just in case no one's aware, it's the #1 CI system on GitHub, which is like a really big deal. You know, a lot of folks are coming from a lot of things like Jenkins, and they're coming over to GitHub Actions. There are huge advantages to using a CI/CD system that's integrated directly into where the developers are working. It's not another system that you need to log into, or another box, or another kind of platform. The same place where you're going to be building the application is right next to your issues, which is right next to your code base, and your discussions, which is right next to your security issues. So there are huge advantages to not having to keep jumping around between different platforms and different systems. So we'd love to hear from you too. We know that we work with all different types of folks from all different types of companies. You could also use this as a BD initiative too, if you want to get more visibility into your platform. Add a GitHub action to our marketplace. It's a great way to have a funnel for folks to use your service and to make it more popular. Anytime that somebody adds one, you can sort of track the telemetry and see how many folks are using it. And again, it's a great way to get visibility or to expose folks to a piece of functionality on your platform that you want to get more attention on. I also want to make you aware too, just in case you're not already, that we also have a package registry as well. So our package registry is a great way to promote your packages. Just like I was saying before too, there are huge advantages to this being right within GitHub. Now, I just want to show off like a great example of a successful GitHub package. In this case, it's going to be Linux. What's really neat about this is that you get to promote now your packages right on GitHub's platform. So the registries are obviously, they're disjointed from GitHub. They're out on some other platform, which is separate from the code and where the issues are. But you can still deploy to those package registries and concurrently deploy also to GitHub's package registry. And we support 5 or 6 of the world's largest package registries. So you can deploy to both GitHub and the other registries as well. Just want to show you real quick, like an example of like a very successful one. Here we have Oracle Linux. You can see that it's been downloaded in this case, something like 1.5 million times. Extremely successful. It's a great way to promote this. And again, it's right from within your GitHub organization. People can browse your packages, they can download it. And the sort of content delivery network is hosted by GitHub. So you don't incur any bandwidth costs there. And we love to hear in chat too, if you have a package or if you have an action that either you've written or you deployed a package, please drop into the chat. We'd love to check it out. And that brings me to another question for the group. We'd love to hear, what's your favorite GitHub action? Again, there's so much going on there, and we've seen such a sort of explosion of all these different actions. We'd love to hear which ones are your favorite. I know someone's going to pop in the pizza one too. I think somebody wrote one that like can order a pizza if you do like a successful deployment. That one's very popular. So what I want to focus on for my part of the talk here is, our automation platform, but specifically some pro tips. Again, I have the privilege of working with some of the world's largest companies, so we get to see how they run. So as part of this talk, we're going to be talking about where you can run, so like how you can wield GitHub Actions and where they're actually going to be performing the compute. We want to run efficiently, so of course we want to be practicing inner sourcing. We don't want to be, duplicating any efforts. We want to be sharing as much as we can across our organization. And then like what's sort of top of mind and what I spend a majority of the time, I get a ton of questions of this every single time we talk to a company is they want to run securely. So of course we want to ship fast, but we also want to ship with high quality. And it's sort of the forefront of everybody's mind that we want to shift these security operations into our development pipeline. And the reason being is that nobody likes to be surprised about anything security related. Talking to a lot of developers, it's not that they don't, that they like inherently hate fixing security things. It's just that they don't want to be surprised by it. They want to be able to say, okay, I have a few security things to take care of, and for that to be accounted for within their sort of standard workday. So you don't wait until like the very end, like when you're ready to deploy, and then you find out you have these security things that you have to fix. It's really helpful for the developers to understand that they have these things, so that way they can raise it with their manager and bring it up in their stand-up, and that they have enough time to address them before you go and deploy. And we'll show you how you can use GitHub Actions and the new security features within GitHub to help you manage that complexity. So let's just talk about running really fast, about how you can run GitHub Actions and how that actually works. So there are kind of 2 flavors here. There are GitHub hosted runners, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. So what these are fully managed and maintained by GitHub's platform. If we have any GitHub Enterprise customers on the call right now, you and your team have 50,000 minutes to draw upon, which is quite amazing. We see in practice a lot of folks sort of dedicate that towards the Mac runners. And just for clarity, we have Mac, Linux, and Windows computers at your disposal. These are ready 24/7, so you can use them whenever you like. And I want to make you aware too that very soon we'll have more powerful runners coming. So if there's any specific hardware that you need, right now we have pretty baseline specs for our GitHub hosted runners. However, we're going to have much more powerful machines. So that way, if you want to, quicken your build time, anything like that, we'll have great options there. And another option too is our self-hosted runners. So let's just say you have a very specific hardware configuration that you need, or you just want to host your own runners and you don't want to use our infra. So right now, folks are provisioning and spinning up these self-hosted runners. So this is an agent that you can install into a computer. You can run it on your own hardware and choose your favorite cloud provider of your choice. And I want to make you aware too that recently we shipped the ability for these to be ephemeral. So we have a custom Kubernetes runner controller that you can take advantage of. And when they're done executing their jobs, you can tear them down and not waste any compute there. So we'll make sure that we drop a couple links into the channel for how you can adopt that. And please let us know if you have any questions about it. So before we jump into security, I just want to make you aware too that we really highly encourage everybody to share as much as you can. When like a software engineer is joining your company, there should be like a series of actions that are provided to them so that way they know how to build your software. We can't underscore enough that we really want to share as much as we possibly can because everybody at your company can benefit from it, especially when folks put a lot of hard work into creating these workflows. And we recently launched a feature that I just want to call out that kind of solves a duplication of workflow files issue that we had before. So what specifically I'm talking about is a reusable workflow. This is a workflow that you can keep within your organization within a repository that people can consume, and you only have to update it in one spot. So let's just say that you have sort of like a workflows repo as part of your GitHub organization. The workflow files live within the .github folder under workflows, and everybody at your company then within that organization can then reference that workflow file. And what's amazing about this too is that this only has to be updated in one spot. So if somebody sets, like an engineering manager or a leader at your company, sort of defines like how everybody should be linting for a specific language, you can then have everybody just consume this one workflow to handle this one piece of functionality. And then that can be updated if you decide to change the linter that you want to use or the technique or anything like this, and you don't have to update every file manually. So we really highly encourage everybody to take advantage of this. There are things that we should be sharing across the entire organization, and you don't have to do any duplicate or manually updating of all the YAML files. So turning it to the group again, we love to hear about a process right now that you'd like to automate. We understand that not everybody has like 100% automation. Again, given the amount of workflows that have been added recently, maybe if somebody types it into the chat, maybe there's a workflow that we can suggest to help you automate that task and make it more efficient. So we'd love to hear what you're doing currently manually, and we can see if we can get that automated as well. So now we're going to jump into my favorite part, security. We want to make sure that we're shipping high quality software. We want to move these operations into development. We don't want to blindside developers. We want to ship high quality software, and they do too. So we want to make sure that we're scanning frequently. And we want everybody to be able to work during normal hours. So we want to find out about any security related tasks that they have to do as quickly as we possibly can. One thing I'll say about this too is that we really want to lean on our automation systems. We want them churning away and performing builds and scanning everything. So again, so that way we don't wait until the very end and then we find out that we have a bunch of security things that we have to fix. And also too, from an engineering management perspective, if we have any repository owners on right now, we want to make sure too that, that we're enforcing these things and that they're taken seriously. So we can enforce as a branch protection on any repository, any check that we want to make sure that has to be passed before we allow the promotion of code into main branch. So we will touch upon that as well. So I'm going to jump back into GitHub's interface, but I just wanted to show you this overview slide because this is a multifaceted security approach that we have here at GitHub. I just want to overview it before we actually show you in products. So there's sort of like three categories here. We have a supply chain, which means that this is code that we're consuming in the form of open source dependencies. This is something that pretty much every piece of software on earth is doing now. Like, whether we like it or not, it really just helps us get software at the door fast. But we want to consume it in a responsible way, what we call securing your software supply chain. So the components that make up your enterprise software. And what I mean specifically about this is that there are vulnerabilities filed against these open source dependencies in the form of CVEs, CWEs, and VDs. We just want to make sure that we're not consuming something that has something that can be exploited. And GitHub's made it extremely easy for you to manage that. One more thing too, this little advanced icon here. So on top of the sort of standard license cost for GitHub Enterprise, the advanced bits are additional costs on top. I just want to make that clear. But we've added a ton of security features, specifically secret scanning, code scanning, and the security overview, which we'll show you in just a moment. So secret scanning, this is something that we see all the time, that people accidentally commit tokens. These are really things that will ruin our day. We don't want them out shipped into our software. Some folks are savvy enough to decompile your application and scrape your keys. We want to know about if we're shipping a key into our code base, and we make it really easy for you to do so. And then also too, for code scanning, we want to make sure that we're getting the results of any code scanning tool that we use in front of the developers. GitHub has a solution called CodeQL, which is a code query language. It's like a SQL-like semantic code engine for you to discover vulnerabilities within your code base. And we'll get into that in a moment. And as I said before, we want to enforce as a branch protection, things that are important to us. We want to make sure that our company is shipping high quality code, and we can enforce this as a requirement that if you have something like high and critical vulnerabilities, that you can't push past it, that these have to be resolved before we can allow that code into main branch. And also the security overview. We want to understand the state of security. You know, a lot of folks, sort of struggle with this problem because there's so many dependencies, there are so many scanning alerts. Most folks are just drowning in these, and we have to sort of start to wrap our head around how bad is this problem? Where do we begin? And maybe we can start with the critical ones first, and then work our way down into like the high and criticals, high and medium. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back into the interface here, and I'm going to show you first the security overview. So don't worry if you don't have this at the top of your organization. Please reach out to the GitHub team. We can set you up with a trial for you to see this for yourselves. And I would even say just in 30 days, you can really glean a lot of interesting insights about the state of security within your organization. And even just in seeing this panel once, it's just really incredible. So what I'm showing you here is that this is the state of security across all the repositories as part of this organization. And again, you might want to assess risk and be like, well, hey, like we have a lot of high end criticals that we need to go and address. We can also detect too what features are enabled. So if someone doesn't have something like Dependabot enabled, we can go and very quickly realize that and maybe go talk to those repository owners and have them enable it. And what I'm showing you specifically here is the code scanning alerts, the Dependabot alerts, and in this case, the secret scanning alerts. So again, this is across all the repositories. We can sort by risk. And if we dive into one of these, for example, like a secret scanning alert, we might be able to understand like what the secret type is. So let's just say that we have 257 Google API keys that are being that are currently within our code base. Well, maybe at like the next engineering stand-up or the next all hands, you might want to say like, hey, we should go address this, and you can kind of concentrate the ask as opposed to tracking down individual repository owners. I wanted to mention too that we also added the ability recently to add a custom pattern as well for regex. So let's just say that you have a secret or token format in mind. You can now add it as a custom pattern, and we can make you aware immediately about any keys that match that pattern and make the developer aware. And again, the whole intention of this is that we don't want secrets leaked because again, that's something that we really want to make sure that we don't do. And I'll just say that it doesn't matter how big the company is. It doesn't matter where these people went to school. It's a mistake that GitHub makes, that Microsoft makes, that everybody makes. And I would say the more that you commit, the more likely you are to commit a secret accidentally. Everybody's super busy and they're trying to get features out the door, and it's something that we see all the time. And it's not like we're getting on people's case for doing this. We just want to make sure that we protect our company's resources and don't accidentally commit any secrets. So for code scanning too, we're going to get into this in a little bit. We're going to jump into Dependabot next. So Dependabot, as part of that that chart that I was just showing you, this helps you address any open source vulnerabilities that you're consuming as part of the libraries that make up your application. So for those folks that are uninitiated, you'll have this lovely banner at the top that says you have security vulnerabilities in your dependencies. Now, this is a fire hose, meaning that every single day, and particularly for certain languages, there are more dependencies than others. This is a constant battle, that there's always something that's going to be disclosed, that there's always going to be a new alert, and we want to make sure that we stay on top of this. And this is pretty laborious, so GitHub has made it very easy for you to start to address these. So you will get a Dependabot alert for an open source dependency that you're consuming. We can sort by severity, for example, like the critical ones usually mean something really bad, maybe something like arbitrary code execution, something that would really ruin our day. So if you click into a Dependabot alert, not only do we notify you that you have a CVE that's filed against your open source dependency, but then also too, we provide you with a security update. When we first launched this feature, we gave the developers the option. They would have to open up the pull request and bump the package version, and that was work that they could then choose to ignore to do. So what we did is that we made an acquisition for Dependabot, and we integrated it into our platform. Now you can have an associated PR filed against the recommendation. And one thing I want to add here too is that the version of the dependency that we recommend is the most mature version of the open source dependency that has all the vulnerabilities filed against it resolved. You can configure Dependabot by adding a Dependabot YAML file to your .github folder to just always grab the latest version. However, it's our recommendation that you grab the version that has all the open CVEs filed against it resolved, because the latest versions of dependencies haven't had sufficient time with the community to be vetted as something that's secure. That might be introducing new vulnerabilities, and maybe you want to let it sort of sit with the community more time and get more eyes on it. So just to show you what this looks like, if you review the security update, you can see here that we open up a lovely pull request. We make it way easier for you to manage this by hitting the merge pull request button. And you can always check out the files that have changed. And you can see that, yes, in this case, we're bumping the package version and the associated hash, making it extremely easy for you to manage the complexity of all these different open source dependencies that we're referencing and make sure that we're on the appropriate version. Okay, so now I want to jump into code scanning, which is sort of super top of mind. So you'll see here at the top two of our repository that we have a security tab. If we click into the security tab and go into the code scanning alerts, and again, don't worry if you don't have all these options. You'll have to be feature flagged for this. If you get event security, again, reach out to our team and we can get you set up with this. One thing I want to make clear too is that CodeQL is an engine that we suggest and came from an acquisition from a company called Semel, which is based out of Oxford, England. They developed this engine. It's been extremely successful, low false positive rate, and we can run a series of default queries against your code base to search for known vulnerabilities within the language that we're scanning for. I just wanted to make it clear that think of this more as like a sort of security hub, and you can add any scanning tool that you like. So the sort of format of the vulnerabilities comes in the form of something called serif. It's like a JSON-like file format for vulnerability data. But bring what you have. If you have an existing security tool that you love, we can pipe in those results and give you the same rich developer experience that I'm about to show you as part of CodeQL. But if you did want to add CodeQL, you can add this right within the interface. We'll set you up with this default sort of default build script. What we'll do is that we'll attempt to auto build. This looks complex, but all you have to do is just change the language. So the language that you want to scan for, in this case, is Java and JavaScript. And then you can commit this to your repository. And what we'll do is we'll call into the CodeQL CLI and start to execute against your code base. And here's where it gets really fun. And this is really what I want to show you, is that developers are going to be working within GitHub. They're going to be staging commits in the form of a pull request. What we hear from a lot of folks is that when security is on another system, when it's in another sort of interface, when it's just like kind of needlessly dumping, a million issues into Jira tickets, it's kind of disjointed from where we're developing. It's like kind of over there. And some folks choose to ignore it then, and they do something like a biannual security build, like when they have like 40,000 alerts. And we'll just say that we'd rather fix one than delay it and just like let them accumulate like into the thousands. So the way that GitHub addresses this is that we now empower you to overlay within the pull request will automatically show you the line of code that's vulnerable. So in this case, we're going to be looking at the lines of code that have changed, and we can see here on line 66 that we're executing a query on our database. And we have a code scanning alert, and it says that we have a query built from user-controlled sources. And this is a high criticality vulnerability that we should address. So I'm going to click in and show more details. So the first thing that a developer is going to do is put a breakpoint on that line 66 and start to wrap their heads around what's going on here. Because as we know, if we have any developers that are on the call right now, the security fix is not always a single line fix. It's not like you would just hit one character and then, okay, now it's fixed and we can move on with our work. We have to understand the full story about what's going on here. We need to understand where the string is entering the application, which methods and classes it touches, and then eventually where it's executed on the database. So in this case, it's a query built from user-controlled sources, classic SQL injection. We need a bigger picture about what's going on here. And because CodeQL executes at compilation time, we can give you this bigger picture. And my favorite part about this is that not every developer too is a security expert. And I guarantee you, if someone has something like a SQL injection sort of vulnerability, they might say, okay, I'm just going to go online, I'm going to go Stack Overflow and start to research. But what we can provide as part of this and the default queries that we execute with CodeQL, we can provide a rich recommendation for how you should fix this. We can show you an example of a bad fix, a SQL injection, and a good fix. again, it's sort of, it's another task that we're sort of burdening developers with. They also now have to be sort of security experts. Our security experts at our companies can provide this and modify this recommendation if they want to give developers a path forwards. We want this to not ship into production, but we also don't want to block developers forever. We want to give them a path forward. It's like, hey, you have a security thing that you have to address, but here's your path forwards, and here's how you can do that. One more thing I'll mention about this too is that we can also write custom rules. So we can drop into the chat the CWEs and all the coverage that we're looking for within all the languages that we support. And CodeQL supports C and C++, C#, Go, Java, JavaScript, Python, Ruby, and we'll be adding support soon for more languages. So if you have any favorites that you want to see, please let us know. But what we're doing is that we're executing very logically. We're executing these default queries. We're looking for known problems within these code bases. And these query packs are updated quarterly. So as the open source community, security community adds more of these, and also to our current customers, they'll contribute these back. Because every single day, again, there could be something like a new Solari gate that we have to make sure that we're scanning for, and we'll have to update these queries as the security landscape changes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back over to the slides. I know we're running tight on time here, so I'm going to make sure that we just finish up so we can take some questions. I just wanted to add one more thing, just space themed here. NASA discovered a critical bug within their flight code. This flight code was written in C, and I'm just sort of like underscoring that, again, it doesn't matter what company you work for, what team you're working on, everybody makes mistakes, and it's something that happens. They had an issue where they weren't checking the size of an array before passing it. They weren't checking the size of the array before performing an operation on it. And that can be bad because we can pass an incorrect size array and then have like an exception that could happen. So anyways, the team, our team at GitHub, previously SEML, wrote a query to then track this down within their code base. They found I think it was like 24 other logical instances of this happening. They had to point the deep space dish network at the Curiosity mission that was en route to Mars to hotfix this, essentially, to make sure the software inherited the software fix while the rovers were en route to Mars. And anyways, I just wanted to share it because it was something that was kind of fixed as the mission was already shipped. They were able to update the software in a very low bandwidth way, and it saved the entire mission. Later in integration testing, I said that they hypothesized that the parachutes wouldn't have opened had they not had Hop fix this. So anyways, it's just one of my favorite examples is sort of that we really do have to check our code. It is mission critical, and in certain cases, it can save an entire mission. So just real quick to recap here, we want to run securely. We want to enforce branch protections. We want to run securely. We want to shift as many security operations into our development pipeline. We want to run everywhere. We can either take advantage of GitHub's hosted or self-hosted runners. And we want to run efficiently. We want to make sure that we're sharing as much of these workflows as we possibly can. So John, I'm going to turn it to you for a second. Do we have any questions while I was talking very fast?
We have so many questions. We're certainly not going to get to them all in the next 7 minutes. So I'll try and feed you a few, and let me know which you want to take and which you want me to take. First off, we've got a couple of questions about actions. Are marketplace actions limited to public repositories? And we should probably mention reusable workflows there as well, I'm guessing. And also, folks want to know, are all the marketplace actions that are available, for GitHub.com and what also available on-prem?
Excellent question. And yeah, what we mean by on-prem, by the way, is that we have, I mentioned it earlier, we have an on-premises version of GitHub.com. Some of the largest companies that we work with, they want to maintain their own instance behind their firewall of GitHub. And we have an on-premises server product. And by the way, too, if you're a subscriber to GitHub Enterprise, we give you a seat on both platforms. So some folks kind of run a hybrid model. They have some repositories that they keep on premises, and they put the rest on GitHub Enterprise Cloud. GitHub Enterprise gives you a seat on both. All right, so to answer your question, of course, the GitHub Marketplace actions, you can pull those down and bring them onto your server. We also have synchronization, too, that if you did want to consume actions from .com, we have a secure mechanism called GitHub Connect, where we can connect your GitHub Enterprise Server instance to GitHub Enterprise Cloud for a variety of reasons, one of which to transmit actions. So if you did want to pull them down, you can. In addition to for security updates, some folks will air gap GitHub Enterprise Server, but that is a little bit tricky because then they're still consuming open source dependencies, but they're not aware of the vulnerabilities then. We have a secure mechanism that connects a GitHub Enterprise Server to GitHub Enterprise Cloud for the purposes of transmitting that vulnerability data to make sure that you're not consuming vulnerable versions of open source dependencies by air gapping. And for those server customers that are on right now, I really highly recommend turning that on. So no, actions are not just public. You can absolutely create ones that are private as well. And we see this all the time. Again, we really want to encourage folks to share as much as they possibly can. And that's one mechanism that you can use. You can write your own private actions. One more thing too, is that if you don't want folks just consuming any action that is on like our marketplace, you have control. The administrators of your GitHub instance, both in Enterprise Cloud and in Enterprise Server, if you want somebody that's curating which actions that you're using, we have built-in controls now where somebody could just sort of designate a single repository where you can have like a curated actions repository essentially. And then your administrator can say, well, only actions can be pulled from this one repo. So maybe like, you have your winter and you have these other kind of actions that have been curated and vetted by your company and then sort of been stamped as okay. And then folks can only pull from that single repository. So we have a lot of options there.
Nice. Okay, so there's another question too here on ARM-based runners, and I'll take that if that's cool, which is that, to my knowledge, we don't have a public roadmap for cloud-based or GitHub-hosted ARM-based runners, but you can install a self-hosted runner on an ARM architecture. I myself have an NVIDIA developer board in the other room that I run a self-hosted runner on to ship my machine learning jobs off to. So for anyone who hasn't done it yet, self-hosted runners are really awesome. They let you use the same mechanisms inside your repo itself for creating, visualizing, tracking, logging those workflows, but the actual activity, the actual processing can occur on a device that you specify. You install a self-hosted runner client there and then specify in the repo that it will connect to that particular device for certain workflows. So that's your workaround for ARM-based runners there.
And John, I have one quick update there too, because I was just chatting with the PM about this, and I'll be careful having been a PM myself about giving dates. But both, I'm assuming this is for like M1 Max, like that seems to be like very popular and something that we're working on right now. So first off, we'll have shortly, and I'll say shortly generically, that we are working on M1 support, Apple, the Apple Silicon for self-hosted runners. And then we will have GitHub hosted runners too that are on M1 in a bit. Right now, we have some hardware ordered for it, and it's something that we would love to host within our device cloud, and it's something that we're working on. We know everybody wants the M1 Max, and they're really hard to get, and they're pretty expensive. It's something that our team is working on. And please keep us informed about what you need there hardware-wise, because we are building this cloud to be most useful for you, and your feedback helps us shape sort of what machine types we pick. So thanks for letting us know.
Awesome. Thank you for that update. That's super exciting to hear, especially as a heavy Mac user myself, of course. Yes. I wanted to address another comment in here. Someone said Dependabot is nice and works on private repos, but code scanning does not, as far as I know. So Glenn, my understanding is that their route to that would be through GitHub Enterprise Edition, right? Do you know of any other way to attach code scanning for private repos?
Excellent question. So yeah, that's a very astute observation. A lot of the things that GitHub ships is also, we allow open source repositories where our platform really promotes, like, again, we love open source. We know it's the engine that's really driving a lot of amazing initiatives, and we make a lot of things available for free. So yeah, if you have a public repository, you can use specifically code scanning. Now, there's one important distinction between that and GitHub Advanced Security. So if you do want to do private source code scanning and you want to see the security overview and you want to do private secret scanning, we highly recommend reaching out to our team. That's part of our GitHub Advanced Security offering. So it will be specifically just code scanning for public repositories that you have access to. but the bigger suite of tools at your disposal for private repositories is something that we future flag enable through the advanced security. So if you click that request to demo button at the top, or if you just reach out to our team, we'd be happy to set you up with that in a trial.
Good stuff. All right, I see we've got 1 minute left, so I'll have to wrap it up on questions there. We might be able to answer some in chat after the fact. Just want to reassure folks that these videos are going to be available after the fact at infocus.github.io. Hopefully that also helps out the person who is looking to see that key takeaways slide one more time.
And one more thing too, we have more great, if you want to pull in the security thread, we have experts that will be presenting tomorrow. I highly recommend checking out both of these, both from a customer's perspective, and then also too, if you have any security questions, please bring them to the sessions tomorrow. Okay, and with that, I think we're at time. We want to be respectful of everybody's day here. We know we have to jump to other meetings. Thank you for joining. We will see you next time. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.